So after this introduction, I'm not sure that I have a lot to add. I just say that I do find it strange to be introduced as a civil activist, since it was never my intention. I was never an activist in my life. I think I only during the 2011 protest in Israel, I think I went only to the last event where I took my older daughters, who were then I think 4 and 2 or something like that, just to get the feeling of an activity like that. And since then I didn't do basically anything. We were all seeing slowly Israel changing its face to some extent. I think that what we can tell right now is that many people felt, we were, going around not understanding, feeling that something wrong is happening, not necessarily knowing what it is and in respect to what it is getting worse. But not really feeling free anymore to speak up, to say, to express our opinions, to some of us, as scientists, for instance, were immediately attacked by social media and media at some level. So things were changing. But for us, what was happening is that in March 2020, it was the first COVID lockdown days. There was no vaccination back then. It was not clear what is going on. Israel was, the situation in Israel was even stranger, since it was after, I think, the 3rd election in a row, meaning we had no elected government. So Netanyahu was prime minister, but not based on being elected, but actually based on just continuation. We knew already then that he picks up his ministers and people around him basically based on personal loyalty rather than loyalty to the country. It was all very well known and clear, and it was like out there up front. It was not even hidden. He said back then that he nominated Naftali Bennett for the Minister of Defense just to make him quiet and, to try to get rid of him. He was saying that himself, so it was clear and known. Israel was declared to be under, how is it called? Matzav Chirum.
Emergency.
Yeah, emergency.
State of emergency.
Emergency, meaning that the government has all kind of special can do to take all kind of special actions without bring them before to be approved by the Knesset. We were after the 3rd election, meaning, by the way, the blue and white, the party uniting Yair Lapid and Benny Gantz won that election in the sense that they had the majority of parliament member elected. But they did not form a new government yet, meaning, and the parliament did not elect a new chair for the parliament, meaning that, for those not familiar with the system in Israel, meaning that if we do not elect new chair for the parliament, then the parliament committees cannot be formed, and it's the parliament committee's role to actually supervise decision taking by the government. So if I sum it all up, we were on those COVID days. We did not have an elected government. The government was basically Netanyahu and his loyal people. We did not have a parliament, and we were sitting at my parents' house, all my brothers and their families and my family, and we were discussing. Netanyahu's trial was supposed to start on the next day. He was facing already back then 3 severe charges, and the trial was actually supposed to start on the very same week. And we were sitting at my parents' house, and I remember myself asking, so what will be the next step? Are they going to lock down courts? And my dad said, no, they can't. I mean, it's impossible. And on the very same night, Ohana, who was back then the Minister of Justice, actually locked down the courts. And just 2 days before Netanyahu's trial was supposed to start. And I think that Israel was the only country, certainly the only democratic country, whose courts were locked down during COVID days. So we were on that very same day, first day, we had no elected government. We had no committees in the parliament. The parliament was basically parallelized. Yariv Levin encouraged Yuli Edelstein, who was the chair of the parliament, not to follow the decision made by the Supreme Court and not to form or to call for election to be replaced. So everything was like crazy out of 3 authorities supposed to balance each other. So we were left basically with just one on that very day. So, and it was, as I said, COVID day, so no one knew what's going on. So based on what we studied, I think already at school, and some knowledge of history, we felt like if we don't know what Netanyahu's plans are, but if he wants to make a radical change on our ministry or our judicial structure or our constitutional structures, then essentially all the roads are open for him. We didn't know that this is what he's planning, but we felt that the threat, given that he has, he is facing this trial, so he needs a change, some sort of a change, and all of a sudden the road was open for him to pursue it. And we were just, my brother made a small video saying that we are going on a convoy to the parliament on the next day. I made a second movie saying that I'm joining this convoy, and somehow this video became viral, and it was like spread like all over the country. And on the next day, we had a convoy of thousands of people from all over the country just traveling to the Knesset. We could not call on a demonstration because it was COVID, so we could not gather together. And the convoy was the only thing we could think of that we could do. And then on that day, we find ourselves, we called people and they actually came. So we found ourselves leading a movement. Of course, immediately tons of people with a lot more experience than us in protest and civil activities joined us immediately. We are still working together since then. So we quickly gathered the experience and the knowledge and the know-how of how to proceed with that, and we found ourselves leading this protest. Just have to say that as soon as the Bennett-Lapid government was formed, we basically closed all of our activities. And we said, okay, we are now, it was a crazy government, the combination was almost impossible, but we said, at least now we trust that those who are leading the country are acting to the benefit of the country, even if we do not agree with their decision. So it was not about the protest itself, we were calling already back then Demokratia, which you can hear now in the street everywhere, because we felt that the risk or the threat to the Israeli democracy was what drove us to go out. By the way, we asked people to come with black flag because in Israel, black flag means two things. One, we put black flag in the sea to signal to the population that the water or the sea is dangerous. So when there is a threat to the people, we put black flag on the sea. And there is also a term called a command with a black flag on top of it, which means that if a soldier or police officer being ordered to do something which is completely not legitimate, then this is a command with a black flag on top of it, then the soldier or the police officer is not just supposed to ignore this command, is actually obliged to ignore such commands. So this is the two meaning of the term black flag, which we kind of spontaneously picked up for the protest movement based on other movements that carry the same name in Israel. So then we closed all the activities, and And I think that what happened after the last election, so some people went back to the streets because Netanyahu won and we were against him, but you have to understand that it was not at the day where the new government was formed that this, what you see now in the street actually started. Because when Netanyahu gave his speech after forming the current government, he actually declared that the government is going to deal with 4 important things, which they also base their entire campaign on. So the 4 points were, I think, the threat of Iran, the economic crisis in Israel, the crisis of safe insecurity, and to promote negotiation with Saudi Arabia. So these were the 4 points that Netanyahu himself said that the government is going to deal with. On the day that the government was formed, these were also the 4 points he was discussing during the campaign. And then 6 days later, Yariv Levin, the Minister of Justice, gave his speech about his plans for the judicial overhaul. And that was the day where the current movement actually reshaped itself or emerged again. It was enhanced a couple of days later when the Supreme Court President Esther Hayut gave a counter speech explaining the meaning of the plans, of the changes that Yariv Levin plans, saying actually, that Israel will no longer be a democracy, and that the threat for minorities and basically any individuals in the country are clearly visible if this plan is foreseen. Just for you to know that like 10 weeks from the beginning of the protest, Yariv Levin himself gave a speech again, or an interview, sorry, saying that actually if the original set of rules as he proposed them were accepted, the meaning of that would have been that Israel would have left with one authority out of 3, meaning that it is no longer a democracy. So he himself said that his original plan was to make Israel, to change Israel completely from a democratic country into something which is not a democracy. So since he gave showed his plan, which he defined, of course, as a reform, but I think that the majority of the people saw actually as an attempt to make a coup. What you could see quite amazingly, that of course all those groups of activists that were there in the street like us in the last couple of years just joined forces again, but more than that, you could see all of a sudden the different sectors in the Israeli society joining forces or building these new groups to counter or to go against or to basically protest against the decision. So you could see groups from the academy, you could see groups of lawyers, you could see groups of physicians, you can see then you could start seeing groups from the different units of the army, like a grassroots organization. So it was never the official organization of these groups that were acting, but individuals from those groups started forming like WhatsApp groups, asking people to work together to go against and to protest against this coup. And the groups grew in a really rapidly, I would say. So really fast. I know one nice example that I like to tell is that all the social workers in Israel, so one called me, say that they want to initiate a new group, so we told her go ahead, and then within I think 48 hours she said that they had about 5,000 social workers already organized on those groups, which is almost the entire social workers in Israel. What we did know based on our experience from the Black Flag movement, that in order to maintain long-term activities, there is a need for some logistics and some assistance in terms of course, finance, but also lawyer counseling so that you know that what you're doing is actually legal. And of course, PR and like printing and media and all that. So a headquarter was formed aiming at enabling the activities of the different sectorial groups. And this worked amazingly well. There are about 207 different groups united under this headquarters. It's just really enabling the activities of the other groups. It's not dictating any activity, any decision, and any strategy, basically. But obviously, if you have all the different, if you have a representation of 207 groups in one forum, then they can share ideas. People can say, okay, we are now going to do this and that on that day, and then other joins. And then if someone proposes to do something and others say things that it doesn't make sense, they can raise their concern. And like this, there is an ability to basically centralize and organize and make coherent activities by the entire, by all the groups. I can say also, it's also interesting that the finance of that activities, which of course costs a fortune, is the majority of that is based on fundraising, civil fundraising in like all kind of, how do you say,
crowdfunding?
Crowdfunding, yeah, crowdfunding. We have more than 20, we have the largest ever crowdfunding campaigns in Israel by far, not just by a little. We raised more than 25 million Israeli shekels in an internet structure, Be Active, and then another similar amount on something which does not run on the internet but on WhatsApp mostly. So about 50 million shekel raised in crowdfunding with very small, relatively very small activities. Of course, some donated more, and then some additional larger donation. The majority of that comes from Israelis. I think around 99% of the money is actually localized in Israel and raised in Israel by Israelis, which is, I think it's non-comparable to anything we have seen in the past. Literally tens of thousands of people donated for this effort. As you can also see that there are hundreds of thousands of people every week in the streets, with a total of more than 2 million Israelis which have already taken active actions in the street. I do want to say that I'm not sure how well it is known and how clear it is seen from a distance, but what we have learned in the last couple of weeks about the situation in Israel, I can summarize it in a couple of sentences. I think it gives a nice framing to what is going on. So we have learned that the ideology of our government is to change the Israel constitutional structure from a democratic, I would say, normal country into some sort of a dictatorship, maybe with a very strong religious flavor and some fascism in it. We know that the majority of Israel, as all the polls are showing, are not interested in this change. In fact, 70% of the population is against either the judicial overall as a whole or a significant part of it. In fact, if the poll from the last weekend, people were asked whether they think that the government should deal with the judicial overall or with other things. So only 8% of the population thought that the government should deal with judicial overall. The others thought that it should deal with other things, which is pretty much aligned with the fact that the election campaigns were not did not deal with judicial overalls, but with other things. So really, it is clear that the Israelis are against this coup. But we know that it is within the ideology of the government to follow it. There are three different groups there. Each one has its own motivation, but they are all united in the need to basically destroy the Supreme Court and the justice system. We also learned that in order to accomplish or fulfill their ideology, they are basically willing to sacrifice everything which is good in this country. They are willing to sacrifice the economy, the high-tech companies. They are willing to destroy the education system, the academy, the healthcare system. They're also willing to, I don't know if you're aware, but at some point the Minister of Defense, Yoav Gallant, said that if they're going to raise like a flag saying that if they will proceed with this judicial overhaul, they are going to destroy the army, because there are tons of different reserve units whose people said that they are not going to, that their contract was as soldiers was with a democratic country, and they are not going to protect or to be part of an army of a non-democratic country. So they really put the Israeli security in threat. And when the Minister of Defense said that, he was fired by Netanyahu. That day was I think the most unbelievable day in this battle till now. When he fired his own Minister of Defense, you could just see hundreds of thousands of Israelis in the middle of the night, just marching at 11 in the evening, marching towards the center part of the cities. In Tel Aviv, it was Kaplan, in Haifa, it was Chorev, etc. And just, blocking all the roads, making fireplace wherever they could. It was just like, it was an unbelievable sight. But just to say that Netanyahu himself was willing to sacrifice, according to his own Minister of Defense, the security of the state in order to promote this coup. So we know their ideology, we know what they are willing to sacrifice, and we have also learned that the democratic system in Israel is very fragile, in the sense that if internal forces are acting against it, it's very hard to prevent them from doing so. And based on this knowledge, it was, I think, Professor Yuval Noah Harari, a famous historian, said that basically we cannot go back. Even if they cancel everything now and decide, okay, we made a mistake, we do not want to pursue this judicial overhaul anymore. What we have learned since then is such that we cannot go back. So from that point on, there could be two ways, at least that I see for the country. Either we fail and they manage to pursue this reform, and then we go on a very, very dark days. This is very similar. What they are planning to do is very similar to what happened in Hungary and in Poland. Actually, today, I don't know if you know, but there was supposed to be a big ceremony of European countries in Israel, and Ben-Gvir, the Minister of Internal National Security or whatever, who is a right-wing extremist, fascist supporter of mass murder, Jewish mass murder of Arabs and so on. So they refused to, the European Council actually canceled this event because he was sent by the government to be the representative speaker of the government in the event. So the European Council canceled this event, and the only countries who were against canceling this were Hungary and Poland. So what they are proposing is to take Israel down the very sad road that Hungary and Poland have taken. Just again, for those who are not that involved, Hungary and Poland are not defined as democratic country by the majority of Western countries these days. And this is where they want to take us. So I'm going a bit to the side from time to time, but just to say that given what we know, as Yuval Noah Harari said, we can only go forward. Either we fall down the same road, if we fail preventing them from doing that, or that we go in the direction that takes the Israel democracy and fix all the weaknesses that we have discovered in the last couple of months, and basically find a way to make the structure stronger and more secure against attempt to make a coup like the one we are facing now. I think that I spoke more than 20 minutes, and it will be, I think, more interesting for all of us if I take some questions, I think.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you very much. Horrifying, but thank you for everything that you're doing. Horrifying. So there are a bunch of questions on the chat, and if people want to ask questions, also raise your hand in the little box there on your screen, and we'll call on you. But while you're looking for the button, I can read. Of course, Donna,
I think it would be nice if you read, you can help me pick up the questions. So naturally,
So
be able to answer all of them.
Yeah, so I was going to ask you the first question, which I see is reflected in, I don't think it will surprise you. Donna is asking, please ask Shikma if she isn't ready to address the kibush. Does she have ideas and thoughts, especially in Chul, overseas? How can we deal with this at our rallies? Our main purpose in rallying is against the coup and to support you. However, we're getting a lot of folks wanting to have a true democracy that Israel has never had because of the kibush.
Yeah, so I have to say that Israel have never had a democracy, not just because of the kibush. I think that there are other groups in Israel who were left behind, whether it was the Ethiopian immigrants, Jewish immigrants coming from Ethiopia, whether these were groups in the periphery. I think that we have a lot to fix. But what you can, but I think that I think that the interesting thing to understand, at least this is how I see it, is that if we look at the political map in Israel, it is actually divided, or Netanyahu worked real hard to draw the watershed and split or tear the country apart under the definition of left and right, or Jewish versus democratic country instead of Jewish and democratic, and we and them, first Israel, second Israel. He worked really hard, spent or invested tons of effort and money into drawing the watershed over there, which also made clear separation between Jewish and Arabs and whatever goes in the West Bank and so on. What the protest is drawing is a completely different watershed, which subdivide what I would call people with democratic attitude, normal people who are willing or interested in living in a normal country where you can pursue your dreams, living under the convention of equality and freedom and that stuff, and those who are out of this camp. And therefore we see within the protest a very large camp, and it really crosses the political map. So we have left-wing, right-wing people, we have people from all over the country, literally from north to south. And I'm saying that because the other big question that the Israel society has to deal with, which has to do with the kibush, but it also has to do with economics, and it also has to do with how you deal with those groups which are left behind. All those things are certainly need to be dealt with but what we are trying to make sure now is that when we deal with all this problem or with issues, when we take decision, and I have my own opinion on each of every single issue that I just mentioned, that all are not democratic in what we currently dealing with, or the situation is not really democratic. I have my own opinion on how we have to how we can solve them, but the other people have other opinion of what the solution could be. And what we are now trying to make sure is that when we take this decision, and such decision on the kibush and everything else has to be taken, but we are trying to make sure that when the decision will be taken, it will be taken in under a democratic discussion. This is what is currently really not secure or not clear. I know that there are people who think that the problem with the occupation is basically the driving force behind what we see. Personally, I'm not certain. In Hungary, they do not have this problem, but still they went under the exact same problem. So I think that what we have now is really to define the camp of those who are interested to live in a democratic country. Now and then we also have to restructure this democratic. What it actually means, to me, it also means to end this endless Israeli-Palestinian conflict, not necessarily in a peace, but putting into an end. I don't see a reason that Israel should control Palestinian people without giving them citizenship. But again, there could be different solutions to that. I'm not certain that the way that I see the solution will be accepted by all of you or by all the other Israelis. And we have to make sure that when we decide how to deal with it, it will be done in democratic way. And this is the concern at the moment, that all decisions from now on will be taken by basically a single entity, which is not democratic, even more than all the problems that we have had in the past. Yeah, this is how I see it, at least.
Thank you. I'm trying to, there are a few questions. I'm going to, basically, this question is, what should American Jews do and what should Israeli Americans do? And David kind of pinpointed a little bit, the mainstream American Jewish community. Should we be holding larger rallies? How else can we support the efforts in Israel? People want to help.
Oh, yeah, so I think at least in two ways. First, I think we know in Israel that the Jewish communities in the US and in other countries kind of diverged from Israel to some extent, because no one really likes the face of Israel as it was seen in the last couple of years. I mean, we lived in Israel, as I said, and we felt that something bad is going on. And I'm kind of certain that this was also visible from outside of Israel. So the first thing that I think that can be done on these days is really to reunite Israel with the Jewish communities all over the world. It's a good opportunity to show to the young generation of Jewish all over the world, I think the real, and I also believe the beautiful face of this country, because really this is the majority of Israel. We didn't know that we were the majority before we started with this protest, but now it is clear that the majority of Israelis did not like what they see in the last couple of years, decade, and a bit more. So it's a good opportunity to really get to know what I believe is the true Israel, and what I hope will become also more and more pronounced in the future of Israel. This is the first thing. The second is, I also know that Jewish communities worldwide are always very protective for Israel. But I think it's important to understand, and therefore they are not criticizing the Israeli authorities, or they try to balance that. Now, I appreciate that. I think it's important, but it's also important to understand that what we are going through right now, if we fail to save the country, Israel will change his nature from its deep nature. So we will still call it Israel, but it will not be Israel anymore. And therefore, what you may be thinking that you are protecting by not criticizing the government in Israel and those this judicial overall, or this coup as they call it, is basically not protecting Israel, is actually helping to destroy what we would like to identify as Israel. And this is something that need to be, of course, taken with care. but it should be clear that in parallel to supporting the people of Israel, it is necessary to understand that this judicial overhaul is really aiming at changing what we call Israel into something which is not Israel anymore. And the more that this is understood, and the more that this is expressed and said and criticized, the better, at least as far as I see it. Again, with making clear separation between the people of Israel, who's really the majority is showing to be an excellent people with very good, I think, values and moral, and to make the separation between that and what we see from our government, which is not representing the citizens' will. The rest, helping in fundraising and so on, it's obviously also very, very important. But I think it's this deep understanding that we need together to, we need to help you build the ones that we have built in the last couple of months in the street of Israel.
So there's a kind of tangential question here to what can Americans do? And Yamit is asking specifically about the Israeli community in the United States. She says, we feel that the Israeli community is confused about our role in all of this.
So I think it's the same. I mean, I'm not making this specifically if people are thinking of coming back to Israel, you have to understand that the Israel that you are planning to come back to is under threat to become something else. It's almost, what I'm going to say, and I'm not really, I think, digesting it fully, but I'm just, people like myself, if they manage, if I look at what happened to people like myself in Hungary, when their judicial overhaul passed, none of them can live in Hungary these days because they will be immediately arrested. So I think that this is, to me, I'm saying that without fully digesting that, but if we look rationally into what happened in Hungary and Poland, the layer of people like myself will not be able to walk freely in Israel if this overall will pass. And so if you are planning to come back to Israel, you need to understand that if this judicial overhaul pass, you will not be coming back to what you are thinking of, but to something completely different. Completely different in a bad way, I would say, right? Yeah.
Okay. And a little bit of a different tone. Tamar is asking, is there an element of the protest movement that is working on finding a new candidate for prime minister and a political party that could represent a hopeful and strong democratic future? Or are the large majority of the protesters happy to vote for the current leaders in the Labour Party?
So first of all, I have to say that this protest is showing a very strong democratic culture in Israel. As I said, Netanyahu is actively working on tearing the country apart, drawing the watershed, as I said, in a place of like 50-50, right and left, Jewish and Israelis, all this subdivision, really intending to tear the country apart. And a lot of effort and a lot of money goes into making those divisions. They control completely the social media. They control a lot the media, and for many years they actually control the entire environment. So people with like myself, we didn't fear to say what we want, but if we were expressed our feeling about stuff, the amount of attacks, literal attacks that we would have been such that you thought twice before expressing your opinion on stuff, specifically in social media. So given that, and given that he have a very effective machine of like brainwashing, the fact that so many Israelis, when the threat became really, really clear, actually went out and went against it and could understand that, you know, that the situation is severe, is a very, to me, it's an amazing show of strength of the democratic nature of the country. So this is one excellent thing that you can that we already, you know. With regards to new leaders, I think that what will have to happen, and this is not going to be trivial to make it, is, as I said, so there is the watershed that Netanyahu worked hard to define, and there is the other watershed that the protest is actually showing for the first time. So defining the camp of Democrats, of normal, unlike the extremists. The role would be to make this watershed the one dominating also the political map. Because as I said, within the protest, there are people with different opinion on what should be the ultimate, you know, what kind of economy Israel should have. Should it be social or more liberal or more capitalistic and so on. There are people, you know, that think one thing and the other, and they are all protesting together just to make sure that when a decision will have to be taken, it will be taken under democratic rules. So we are dealing with the rules of the game rather than the outcome of the game as it ends. And I think that as long as this is the case, we are not talking about a single party that can emerge out of the protest, because eventually, you know, you need to take decision about the countries. What I think should happen is that there will be many or a new generation of people that actually find themselves in all the different countries that represent the, you know, that are within the camp that I just defined. This is what should happen, but it's going to be hard. As I said, the challenge is to beat the poisoning machine, as we call it, that Netanyahu built to control the narrative and control the media, basically. So it's not easy, but it will have to happen, and we'll have to continue being active in making it happen, provided that we win the current battle.
Yeah. The next question is about the Arab communities in Israel. Do you think that the protest movement is doing enough to reach out to the Arab communities and promote local protests, given how key their participation is in any politically meaningful path forward?
So obviously this question is complicated, but as I said, we are redefining the backbone of the country to some extent. It diverged to crazy places in the last decade because it was the intention of Netanyahu. And now I think that we are redefining the core values based on which we would like to structure our country for the next generation. And naturally, this redefinition happens first at the majority, which is the Jewish majority of Israel. And then each of the different groups will have to be subdivided according to this, in the two sides of the watershed, as the one that the protest is showing. So I think it makes sense that first it is more of a Jewish thing, because it really is a redefinition of the backbone of the country. And after us, also the Arab community in Israel will have to go through the same redefinition to follow it, and also other smaller communities in Israel. There are, as I said, we left behind in the 75 years of Israeli independence. We've left behind different groups, not just the Israeli Arabs and not just the Palestinians and so on. So each of these groups will have to be to define itself. We will have to find a way to address all those groups, but what is going on is really a redefinition of the backbone of the country, I think, for the future. And it's it's a challenging process. I mean, it's not really, it's really hard to make this shift, to change the watershed, to shift it from where it is right now into discussing back core values and basic consensus and agreement after so many years of being just tore apart around other things. So it will take time. I hope that the Arab Israeli community will be part of it, but it's also clear why it's taking more time.
Ofri is asking about American Jews now, and there are a lot of rallies in various cities, but what she says is that they're small and that the only way to mobilize American Jews is through the synagogues, the Reform, Conservative, Orthodox, Reconstructionists. She's asking if the Jewish movements are in touch with you.
Yeah, they're really supportive. Because it's also clear that we are going toward, I mean, this government is taking Israel part of the non-democratic actions that are being taken. And by the way, I did not say that, but you have to understand, we are talking a lot about this judicial overhaul, which is dealing basically with changing the balances between the justice authority and the government. But you have to understand that in parallel, they have started pursuing more than 150 different laws, and none of them is to the benefit of the people. They are all really sectorial, all strengthening a lot the Orthodox communities. They are talking now about a budget with 12.5 billion shekels that goes directly with almost no supervision to Jewish Orthodox communities who do not, the students there or kids there do not study mathematics, they do not study English. So basically they're really kept behind on purpose to prevent them from one day becoming, part of the society and of the economy. So it's not just the judicial overhaul, but it really is like a blitz, we call it, of changing completely the nature of the country. And also a part of it is not being open to the other streams of the Jewish nation. So this is also a threat for the non-Orthodox communities worldwide and in Israel, and we are in close touch and with a lot of support from these communities. Yes.
Yeah, Rachel is asking about the compromise, she puts it in quotes, with the government, Gantz and Lapid. She says, I can't believe that they believe you can trust Bibi and they still are talking about a compromise. What's your take?
So first of all, yeah, I think, well, you cannot compromise on, democracy. There is no half democracy or quarter democracy or 3/4 of democracy. So I think that I'm in favor of reaching some sort of, not a compromise, but it's okay to make changes to the judicial system. In fact, the protest was demanded from the beginning, and this is still the demands of the protest. There are two things. The first is take off completely or remove completely these laws, this legislation move it away, cancel it, say that you're not or don't follow it, just cancel completely those changes, and then say that or accept that any deep changes or depth changes in the constitutional structure of Israel will be accepted with broad consensus. Because I'm okay with making changes provided that they represent, the vast majority at least of the population, which is not what is happening right now. So it's fine that they are having these discussions, trying to reach, compromise is a bad word here, trying to reach, maybe to change the way that the system is working. Personally, I think that since they are talking now for 5 weeks, and no progress was made, and you can still hear the minister participating in this, the coalition ministers participating. They are saying that if they do not reach an agreement, they will go full power, continuing with the original plan. that they are not accepting the fact that that they cannot do what they want to do, that they cannot make those changes without broad consensus. So I don't think, to me, I believe that these discussions are only aiming at trying to, relax us, make us, just taking the leg off the gas pedal, and then they will proceed doing. By the way, this was the way that Poland did it. So in Poland, they started with a very aggressive set of rules. Then the population or the citizens protested. They blocked everything. They stopped everything. The people went back to their homes, and then they pursued the same legislation, just in a much slower pace, until it was too late for the people to understand that they're basically living in a different country. So I think that this is what they are, at least the concern is that this is what they are willing to do here, and what they are trying to achieve with those negotiations at the president's house is exactly, make the protesters basically go back to deal with their own business, and then they could pursue it in a much slower pace. But as I said, if they're able to reach some sort of a decision on changes which do not jeopardize the democracy of Israel, then I will be happy to accept that in general.
We have time for 2 more questions, Tamar.
Okay, so I'm trying to find a bit of a different angle here. Neely is asking, what's going to stop the demonstrations in Israel?
So as I said, we have 2 demands, right? Remove completely the threat to the Israeli democracy, which is the set of laws. They have not canceled any of them. I mean, all of them are in some level of being progressed. Some of them, in fact, the law that changes the way that the committees for electing new judges, which is what their main interest is, because they want to control the way that that judges are being elected, such that they can bring in loyal judges, basically. So this is their main interest. This is the main law that they have been pursuing. And this law is in a situation that the coalition can decide to move forward with it. And in 6 hours, they can complete the legislation. So this is the situation at the moment. You have to understand that the threat is clear, but they are kind of not doing that, or they are saying that they're not doing it, but they have the majority in the parliament. And if they decide in 6 hours, these laws can be part of the Israeli law system. So the first thing is, the first demand is that they will keep completely reject it. There is a procedure to do it. So to be that the law that was started, the process is started, can be pulled back. And the second thing is that they need to somehow secure the Israeli democratic structure, in the sense that at least they agree with and backing this agreement in the law, that deep or depth changes in the constitutional structure of Israel can only be made with broad consensus. These are the 2 demands of the protest. If they are fulfilled, I will not see a need to continue being in the streets.
I'm aware that Oz is keeping me very strict to a 1-hour time period. So I'm being WhatsApped a whole bunch of questions also. One is, how are you going to keep the stamina of the protests throughout the summer and the Jewish holidays during the Chagim?
So, I mean, we are in the middle of an historical event, certainly in Israel, but I think that also worldwide, from the point of view of the length of this movement and the participation. So, as I said, even last week, last Saturday, we had almost 400,000 Israelis in the street, which is an enormous amount. It's more than 4% of the population in Israel. I don't know, you can calculate the numbers, the equivalent of US citizens in the street. 4%. So I'm saying that because we don't have any experience to learn from of what is the dynamic of such an event. Clearly, it will have different phases with more energy, with less energy. I think that the important thing is that people understand there is a significant group of people who understand that they need to remain focused. Not necessarily being, very active, but focused with all the changes that are going on. And what I hope is that, we will maintain some continuous activity just to remind the coalition and the opposition that, hey, the people are also here. But I want to believe that when the threat is again very sharp, we will see hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people in the streets. This is my hope, at least.
Yeah. Oz, can I ask one more question? One last question. Are there any efforts being made to reach out to ultra-Orthodox Israeli citizens? And I just want, and can the religious American community help with this? I do just want to say that there is a wonderful Israeli who's making videos in Yiddish for the Orthodox. I don't know if you've seen that, but she's amazing.
Great.
She's amazing. But if you have anything to add there.
So I think that the answer is yes, but obviously not enough. I think that it's also something which is not really known, I think, outside of Israel, also not in Israel, but you have to understand that the situation with the ultra-Orthodox communities in Israel and the amount of their percentage in the population, which is growing rapidly, is such that even if Israel was not going under any, judicial overhaul or a coup, it shouldn't take too many years, I think 15 years or something like that, and the economy will simply collapse just due to that. So some changes are needed regardless of the current situation. And of course, the current situation, given that the politicians of the ultra-Orthodox Jewish communities are really active in pursuing this overall, because they need to somehow justify the fact that their communities are not taking part in the army, and they're not taking part of the economy. So just being really guinea pig, I hope that it's not an awful term in English, on the economy. So they need to justify it somehow. It's clearly non-democratic, and the only way to justify it is to, making sure that Israel will not be a democratic country. I do think that there is a big difference between the political leaders and the people themselves. I know that from my experience in the academia, there is an understanding of the ultra-Orthodox that changes are needed and education is essential and so on. But it's very, very, very hard, and I'm far from being an expert in that.
Okay, I think we've reached the hour, and what can I say? Thank you very much for your work and your words and your explanations and everything that you're doing. We all are doing what we can. I would actually really appreciate it, Shikma, if you could just stay on the Zoom for a few minutes.
Sure, just to say, guys, this is whatever you are doing is significant and a lot. I mean, it's not that we have been seeing bad things happening in Israel, and it didn't make me do anything until some red line was crossed for me. So I'm not expecting anyone to go out nuts in doing stuff. But the more that you are involved, the more that you are aware, I think that by itself it's useful. And of course, from that, there are different things that can be done, as we discussed earlier. But it's not that I'm thinking that everyone needs to wake up every day and just say, how can I, save Israel today? I don't think it's realistic. It's just not how things work.
Shikma, I want to echo the many comments we get in the chat. People want to thank you for everything you do. I also want to invite you, if you haven't yet joined the WhatsApp group, scan the picture here to join our WhatsApp group. And Shaul put in the chat a link to the website, a link to the chat, to the WhatsApp group, and the
but Tamar, you can send it to me. It will be easier than scanning,
I'll send it. Yeah, I'll send it to you.